Hey guys, and welcome to Anchor to Truth. Today we are diving into chapter 41 in the book of Jubilees. So let's get started.
All right, guys, let's do it. Let's start in verse 1. And in the 45th Jubilee, in the second week, and in the second year, Judah took for his firstborn a wife from the daughters of Aram, named Tamar. But he hated and did not lie with her, because his mother was of the daughters of Canaan. And he wished to take him a wife of the kinsfolk of his mother, but Judah his father would not permit it. And this the firstborn of Judah, was wicked, and Yahuwah slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, his brother, Go in unto thy brother's wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her, and raise up a seed unto thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed would not be his, but his brother's only, and he went into the house of his brother's wife, and spilt the seed on the ground, and he was wicked in the eyes of Yahuwah, and he slew him. And Judah said unto Tamar, his daughter-in-law, Remain in thy father's house as a widow till Shelah, my son, be grown up, and I shall give thee to him to wife. And he grew up, but Bethuel, the wife of Judah, did not permit her son Shelah to marry. And Bethuel, the wife of Judah, died in the 5th year of this week.
Okay, so I know I've got a couple of things I want to address in here. The first thing is this. I mean, clearly this seems like an arranged marriage. You know, he didn't want to be with this woman, right? So I just find that interesting because, I mean, we hear about, you know, go and take you a wife from so and so, or go and take a wife from this area or whatever, but it's never really talked about as being specifically like an arranged marriage, where it seems like he was kind of forced to do this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Y'all have any other takes on that, or is that pretty much what it seems like to y'all?
Yeah, I mean, it says right there in verse 1, it says, and Judah took for his firstborn a wife from the daughters of Aram. So I guess he didn't, maybe he kind of knew what his son liked. I don't know, maybe it didn't matter. He's like, hey, come with me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess another way to look at it is like not so much like took in any kind of like negative aspect or given in like a negative, but like remember whenever he sent the servant out to find the wife at the well, and he's like, oh, he found her to be pleasing, and he brought her back, and then there was the whole lovey-dovey moment where she lifts the veil and everything's all cool, but in that moment you could kind of, if you wanted to write it that way, the servant went and took for him a wife. You know what I mean? So I wonder if there's a negative connotation there, or it's just kind of stating some quick and fast facts. And I'm not trying to diminish that. It may be more of that. Judah was just doing what he wanted to do, and everybody had to deal with the situation. But I wonder if, because we do kind of see that scenario play out in other situations, and the wording's different.
Yeah. Kind of seems like this is, the apple don't fall too far from the tree kind of situation here. It's like, what happens younger in life, we do stupid things, right? And then as we get older, we're like, hey, if I were to do this over again, I wouldn't go that route. So I'm going to teach my son to do it the right way. As a matter of fact, I'm going to force him to do it the right way, right? I'm going to take the wife for him, so he makes the right decision. I'm going to make that decision for him. And yeah, still didn't work out.
So Kyle, right there at the very beginning, that first line off to the left, it has like a date. So I know we've been tracking those along the way. Is that date 2165? Is that saying from creation we're at year 2165?
I believe that is correct.
So that's interesting because like me, I love numbers. I was like, kind of the numbers stand out on the page to me. So I always love where's the world at this time? Because we in today's world in 2020 something, whatever year you're watching this, hopefully on into the future. But like this is 2,000 years from creation, and we're like, okay, this is the state of the world, and we go back and look and say, well, things were just so different back then. The world was a different place. There were just a bunch of cavemen and blah blah blah. This is so long ago, and then you read these stories and Joseph's like running the world, and Pharaoh's doing this, and now Judah's trying to make sure his descendancy is all correct. And so we're watching like this passage of time. I mean, that's what the book of Jubilees is here for, is to tell us the divisions of times, and he's breaking it down in increments that we can easily digest. It's not like And 500 billion million years ago, it's, hey, about 4,000 years ago, this is what was going on. And we can see these time periods as they pass that, we're a part of a time period. So 2,000 years forward, you're around the time of Yeshua. 2,000 years from that, you're in our time. So it's just kind of an interesting thought to kind of put that back into perspective, that these aren't stories from millions of years ago. These aren't stories that are so far fetched that this couldn't be us. They were still living their normal lives, dealing with normal people problems. We've just added a lot of more complexities to our world today.
Okay, so two things I wanted to bring up off of what you were pointing out there, Jonathan. One was I figured out what this is for. It's 2165 AM. That stands for arranged marriage. So, I mean, it's
There's a lot of that going on in this book, then.
So it means Anno Mundi or something like that, which is Latin for year of the world. But yeah, 2,165 years from creation is what this is saying here. But what's crazy to me, though, is I mean, obviously a lot has led up to this, but this event is taking place 509 years. I did the math because it was like 1656. 509 years from the flood. What did it say? And they began to eat blood or whatever. So they goofed it up immediately. So golly, man. But that was it.
No, I think it's interesting. As we're this story always comes up in when you're reading through the first 5 books and you're trying to understand more of what Scripture's talking about, and you run into this kind of awkward conversation. Hey, your brother died. It's your turn now. It's your job. And it seems like it takes away a lot of the personality of the story. It takes a lot away from some of the attraction, desire, all that stuff. Is like, it's just a job at that point. And I wonder if that's kind of where Onan was coming from. He's like, hey, I didn't do anything to sign up for this. Like, I got all these life plans. I got all these expectations. I got things that I want to do. What's hard to contend with, we know that God is righteous and his ways are righteous. So, he's like, well, then God slew him. So we know that was the correct answer. In our world today, we're so much into, you love whoever you want and you marry whoever you want. And if you want to be 18, you want to be 30, you want to whatever the story is, it's our choice. We're here. It was Judah picked for him a wife. Dude died. It's okay, brother, it's your turn. Like, there's not an option B. There was just, this is how it goes down. So it's just interesting to see, like, again, I was saying, this isn't that far away really from our world today. And this was like not an option. This is what you're going to do. Onan, this is your new job. And, we can put ourselves in those shoes pretty clearly of like, imagine being her. I didn't marry you. I don't like you. And imagine being him. I had other plans. I had stuff I wanted to do. And then even worse, imagine being the youngest brother who didn't die because your other 2 brothers did the wrong thing. Like, I'm 13. Yeah, in 5 years you're not, though. So you already know what your future is going to be. And now you got to marry or, be with this old lady. And I mean, who knows how old she was, but older than he was because he wasn't even old enough to engage in that activity. So, it's an interesting idea there. And, it kind of makes you wonder, where's everybody's headspace at in that? And then, like, obviously God's will still like, there is a proper order to this, and that has to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those tough subjects to discuss too, because the whole spilling of the seed conversation that we're going to have to get into a little bit. But so he took it as far as going and doing the deed,
right?
But I mean, I'm curious what you guys think about this. So he's supposed to go get her pregnant, right? And he didn't want to do it because he knew, as it says, Onan knew that his seed would not be his, the seed would not be his, but his brother's only, right? Does that mean that he's supposed to be taking on the responsibility of raising that child as well? But because it kind of seems that way because of what he does, right? He's like, I don't want the responsibility of this with her because I don't want to commit my life to helping out with this situation. But the statement, he knew that the seed would not be his, but his brother's only, leads me to believe that there's a possibility that he wouldn't have the quote unquote responsibility, like the fullness of that responsibility. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, so Kyle, to kind of dig into that question a little bit, you're asking. So we look at Onan, and so he's basically saying, and he's very selfish. Let's just say that. Like, both these guys are very selfish men. The first one's like, hey, I didn't want her anyway, just like you said, and I wanted someone else. Maybe I had a second cousin lined up on mom's side, and she's a lot prettier, and I liked her, and she liked me, but dad went and got me somebody that I really didn't care to be with, and so out of spite, I'm not doing anything with her whatsoever. So we see that he is so wicked that he did not even want to take her into his marriage chamber to be properly married to her. And so in his wickedness, God's like, you know what? Whatever else was going on with him, we're not told specifically if there was more. There had to have been a little bit more to his son than just that. There was something that God deemed wicked enough to kill him. So he's gone. Onan, under the Torah, and we all know the Torah has been from the beginning. This isn't a new concept here. He's like, now you're to take the widow of your brother, have a child by her, and by Yahuwah's law, you are to be a father to that child. Now that child will carry on in the lineage of your brother, right? Mm-hmm. So anything you have past that, that's yours. But you will take care of this child. He will be your son. But this is supposed to be an honor thing. You're supposed to be honoring your brother by doing this, and you're honoring, most importantly, you're honoring our Heavenly Father by carrying on the family name, right? Mm-hmm. So he decides, well, whatever reason he didn't like his brother, maybe he's got some issues himself. He's like, nope, it won't even be my son. So why am I going to do this thing? It's like, well, you're dumb, and God killed you. So then that happens.
So is this like a lineage only thing? So he's going to raise him fully as if he was his son, yep. But so he's going to have all the responsibility.
Yes.
And he's going to have all the financial responsibility.
Yes.
But as this child grows up, it's not his by lineage. It would be to his brother.
Right.
Which, does that mean also, I'm just curious if you're familiar with this or not, does that mean that anything that the child grows up and has his own land and sheep and all that mm-hmm. stuff, is that not part of real dad's stuff anymore because he's in a different lineage?
I don't know what you mean by his own. You mean like he goes out and has his own family, basically, or has his own farm with animals?
Yeah. Like,
I
mean, obviously,
Well, I mean, it's like all of us. At some point, we left our family to go be one with our wives and start our own families. And so it's the same thing. He's going to go at some point, have his own place, his own animals, and everything else. But when it's written when they're doing the lineage part of this, or doing the family tree, he's going to be named as the son of the deceased father or mm-hmm. the deceased brother. As far as the legalities and all the little things in there, I have no idea.
Okay.
But Onan is to raise him as his own. I mean, technically, it is his son.
Right.
But for the sake of the lineage of his brother, so that his brother's family tree doesn't just stop, like it's done. That's it. You had no other kids, no one to carry on your part. Then he's there. He would be put in place there to carry that part on. Whatever children Onan had with her after that, or however that works out, he has to take her as a wife. Those become his. That's part of his family tree. So but I think what we're looking at here is if we go back to the very source of this, I'm not sure. I was trying to look up a minute ago. I haven't found the information yet, but I think Judah kind of messed up marrying a Canaanite woman.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think part of really the issue here, I think, is really mom. Mom's kind of behind the scenes, instead of being mom, like supporting dad and kind of like, getting that family going and, the whole dynamics of the whole family. It's more or less like, it seems like she's in the ears of her boys too much.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not honoring Judah. They're not honoring the family. They're not honoring the process. They're not honoring anything. And so there's this wickedness there. And I know when you go back, and of course it gives earlier a little side note there. It talks about the testament of the 12 patriarchs. Again, I encourage you and go and read Judah's portion of that. And he explains and goes in a little bit more detail about the story part right here and sheds a little bit more light on it. But from that and this and the canon that we have, I just don't see her in a positive light whatsoever. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to read here in just a minute. She dies too. If I didn't already read it, I don't remember.
You did, yeah.
I did. Yeah, I think. Yeah. The wife of Judah died in verse 7.
Mm-hmm.
So she's also like, I almost feel like God's like, yeah, and you got to go too.
Yeah, to shut the whole thing down.
That's my personal opinion on that one. It's like you done cause all this discord, and you just, it's not a good thing. So. But I think all this stems back to if Judah would have married proper, it probably would have negated all this stuff happening here and then what ultimately happens with him and Tamar.
Onan was like, man, I don't want to be Uncle Dad. Sorry. Okay, we'll leave that at that.
Yeah.
Well, and the interesting part about that is, like, I said, in our culture today, this sounds just absurd as all get out. This is like every man, every wife would be looking this in there and be like, no, I don't care what is going on. My sister's going to stay my sister, not your wife. I don't care how this plays out or what this looks like. Not an option. But it obviously back then was like it was just normal. Like it wasn't like, oh, and then Onan he had to pick his jaw up off the floor because he had never heard this before. It was like, oh no, yeah, it was definitely my job, and I heard you. I'm just not gonna do it. So I think that's that rebellion. That's that choosing to know, hey, my dad told me this is the way it's written. God's clearly judging me because of the standard that was already set before us. You know what I mean? And I think that's the hard part about all of that is like it's trying to apply our today logic back then. And I mean, it's not. I'm not going to say that things are different now, but we don't live in this kind of society. We don't have wives being given. We don't have now. You have if your brother just dies or whatever, you're automatically filling the shoes. Like we just don't see that today. I mean, maybe that's our error, but at least then it wasn't outside of the cultural norm. And so I think that's what makes the story much more, like Joe was saying, they were putting her in a really bad spot of, hey, you no longer have a husband. You are unclaimed. You are you don't have any entitlement to the world. You can't buy land. You can't. There's a lot of stuff that she's, in a bad position. And they're saying, hey, go take care of, that Torah is always about life. So go take care of her, make sure that she's solid. She's good to go. And yeah, like what a blessing to be able to say, I was able to carry on my brother's name. Like we do that in war and stuff like that. We make sure to grab the dog tags and take it home. So that way you can you give the mom or the wife something to remember their kid by, so that at least their name carries on. They get a plaque at Washington, D.C. or something. Right. And so this was kind of that same version of that back then. So it is a hard story. So this isn't one that I think it's only written in scripture like once of like it being very clearly laid out like this. So it was for a purpose. And Joe, I think you hit the nail on the head. This was to show who these children really were and who the wife really was. Mm-hmm. And hey, the king lineage has to come through Judah. It can't come through this situation. Like it can't be Onan and the first brother. It can't be that mom, because that's a variation in the proper order of things. So I think it was just kind of like a Nadab and Abihu. It was just like let's clean this up and let's move forward correctly. Abraham or Aaron, don't you dare cry, because it's their own fault. And this is what you're supposed to deal with. Judah, don't you cry. This is your own fault. Now we're going to move forward correctly. Remember your lessons. Don't go back and be dumb, please. Of course, that always is never the case.
Right.
But that's the goal.
What I find interesting here as well is I wonder if, let me get you guys' opinion, when we look at verse 6, it says, and Judah said unto Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain in thy father's house as a widow till Shelah, my son, be grown up, and I shall give thee to him to wife. Do you really think this was his intent? Because here's the deal. He done lost 2 sons with the same woman.
I mean, I think so, because it says he grew up, but Betsuel, one of his wives, did not permit her son to marry.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think he really meant it.
It seems like it, which is crazy. Like you said, you know, you're 0 for 2. Why are you gonna go again?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. I mean,
I get what you're saying.
And
yeah.
then she died the fifth year of this week. So she didn't allow that son to marry, and then she died shortly thereafter. So I mean, I think this was one of those things like the Lord's like, okay, trying to make the best of this situation, like y'all were
Right.
talking about. But y'all aren't getting your stuff together, so I'll just wipe you out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you look at those timelines too. So we started the story in 2165, and then by the time we get back over there in this part of the story, we're at 2168. So it's roughly about 3 years
Right.
that this has been going on. So and then in the 6th year, so now we're at 2169. Now we're 4 years into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this isn't like this happened within an 8-month period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is some time, but it just makes me wonder if he really meant that, or if he was just trying to pacify her and say, just go home and maybe give him some time to think about it himself. And he knew that his son was young. He's like, well, gives us some time there to kind of maybe figure some things out. But just reading that again, Kyle, in verse 7, I really think the reason why the mom died, I think God just took her out because she was not permitting what was proper to take place.
Right.
And because he wasn't of age yet to marry, instead of it being the third son dying, it's like, okay, you want to do evil on the side of the Lord as well? All right, here you go. Because it says that, and it said that she would not permit her son to marry. So at that point, in 3 years later, he's old enough to marry. So she's not allowing it.
Mm-hmm.
So he sends her away for however long till my son is of age. So in 7, it sounds like he's of age to marry, but mom's still like, nope, you're not marrying this woman. I put my foot down, and God's like, well,
My
all right,
foot's bigger.
You got to go. So, and then we'll pick it up from there and pick up the rest of the story. But it's kind of curious what you guys thought on that. And if you guys, watching us, if you leave it in the comment section, if you think that he really meant to marry his son, or if that was, or whatever you think was going on there. I'd like to hear your comments on that. And I agree with you guys. He probably meant to, but again, when mom stepped in, she was like, no. He was like, okay.
All right. Well, Joe, get us going in 8, brother.
All right, let's do it. In the 6th year, Judah went up to shear his sheep at Timnah, and they told Tamar, behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnah to shear his sheep. And she put off her widow's clothes and put on a veil and adorned herself and sat in the gate adjoining the way to Timnah. And as Judah was going along, he found her and thought her to be a harlot. And he said unto her, let me come in unto thee. And she said unto him, come in. And he went in. And she said unto him, give me my hire. And he said unto her, I have nothing in my hand, save my ring that is on my finger, and my necklace, and my staff, which is in my hand. And she said unto him, give them to me until thou hast sent me my hire. And he said unto her, I will send unto thee a kid of goats. And he gave them to her, and she went in, and he went in unto her, and she conceived by him. And Judah went unto his sheep, and she went to her father's house. And Judah sent a kid of goats by the hand of his shepherd and Adulamite, and he found her not. And he asked the people of the place, saying, where's the harlot who was here? And they said unto him, there is no harlot here with us. And he returned and informed him and said unto him that he had not found her. I asked the people of the place, they said unto me, there is no harlot here. And he said, let her keep them, lest we become a cause of derision.
Okay.
This story gets interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, towards the beginning of this story, we're reading. It seems like Judah's trying to do the right thing, right? He goofed up here with the Canaanite women, and he's trying to get his sons on track, which staying in the right lineage, right? Stick with this group of people, not go outside of that. But in 2169, I mean, we're still like, we're talking about 4 years later.
Yeah.
Here he is going, and I mean, yeah, I know a lot can happen in a year, but good gracious,
Man.
He's finding a harlot, right? I don't know. It's just odd. do as I say, not as I do, kind of thing, maybe.
So as I'm reading this one, it's interesting because, like I said, I always love comparing stories. So like when we see in the New Testament, we see Yeshua walk in, going on a mission, taking care of some business, and yeah, you're asking me how am I going to bring Yeshua into this? He's always on the way to somewhere. He's like, hey, I'm on the way to go heal so and so. I'm on the way to go talk to so and so. And on the way, he performs a miracle, or he talks to somebody, or he sits down and has a moment with the lady with the issue of blood. It's like on the way to do something he's supposed to be doing, he has a moment. He takes a solitary moment out to do something good and positive. And we're like, oh, Judah, hey, he's on the way to go do something. He's getting ready to go shear the sheep. That's something that I guess like, we've been doing our studies lately. And I guess that wasn't like they just didn't do that on the local farm. They actually went to a place to do this. So they drove all their sheep to this place. They sheared them there and then brought their sheep back home so that we weren't carrying, 85 bags of wool. Well, it makes sense. Let the animal that already has it growing on their back, let them walk it up there for you. So he's taking care of just regular business, regular commerce, just everyday life, and comes across said lady. Again, where's his headspace at? He's, I mean, maybe he's still mourning for the wife, and it's been a little while. We can speculate forever, but what? Why was this an option for him? Especially after he's trying to do the right thing by the boys. He comes up and he's like, I know what I'll do. I'll set the worst example possible and see how that plays out. Well, in doing that, I mean, one, your perception level is like at negative 100 because you're like, hey, this girl has been in your family, been around your face. You know who this is, but because her clothes were different, this is like the original Superman. You put on glasses, and all of a sudden you have no idea who it is. She puts a veil on. He's like, I have no idea that you're the exact person I've seen 100 times. So, this is him being in the best word possible. He's being a dummy, and she's being very deceptive. Like she's choosing to go out of her way to like, where's he going to be at? I'll make sure I'm there. I'll make sure that I'm in his purview, knowing the situation, instead of her supporting him through this hard time of losing 2 kids and a wife. She's like, what can I get out of this situation? Now, the hard part is it seems as though this was God's design for her to have some child by somebody in the line of Judah, because he was like, if you don't have a kid with her, I'm gonna kill you. So you need to have a kid with her. And man, this must be the best DNA in the history of the world, where God's like, this person's gonna have a baby, and if you don't, we're gonna kill you. So it's an interesting, like, this dynamic is like all over the place. This is soap opera 101, and she's setting herself up. He's doing the deed, and in his headspace is just clearly, he's like, you know what? I think he had fallen. I think he was really like in a hard spot. He's like, man, here's my ring, my necklace, here's all my prized possessions, pretty much everything he was carrying with him of any prominence, and anything that would distinguish him as one of the sons of Jacob. This isn't just random dude. You know what I mean? This isn't Steve or Larry from down the street. This is Judah. He just got saved by Joseph. His whole family is blessed. He's got all the promises from Abraham and Isaac. This is like A+ dude. And he's not, again, not Naphtali, not, Zebulun. This is Judah. Judah and Levi. These guys are supposed to be the A+ alpha dogs. Man, Judah, what's going on, man? Is life really that bad? Did things get that hard? Like, did you forget to trust in God for all your wants and needs? Like, man, it's just, this is a really interesting story. Like, the more you dig into it, the more you don't know what's going on. And, you're trying to figure out where's everybody's headspace and everybody's heart at.
Yeah, the only thing I would say different in that, Jonathan, is this. When we look at our canon, this story is inserted like right in the midst of Joseph's story. So all this is taking place. He hasn't even met Joseph yet. The reconciliation hasn't happened yet. But everything else you said, spot on, brother. But it's one of those funny things in the Torah where all of a sudden you have a story, then they insert this. So if you go back to the canon, it's like you're reading the story of Joseph, and then you turn to the next chapter, whatever is this, and then you read this. You're like, wait, what? What's going on? Now, the reason why I think they insert that in there is, well, God knows why he does everything. but also because when we get to that point in the story of Joseph, and Isaac doesn't want to let Benjamin go, he's like, well, shall I lose another son? He was basically saying it's gonna, if I lose Benjamin, I'm dead. I just might as well die. But you see the one who steps up is Judah. So Judah comes in and says, hey, Dad, basically, more or less words, I know how it is to lose a son. I've already lost two myself. And I promise you that when I take Benjamin under my wing, that I will not let anything happen to him whatsoever. You can trust me, Dad. And you see that relationship with Judah and Benjamin throughout the time, because usually, during the split of the two kingdoms, who's with Judah is Benjamin. Benjamin's kind of that little brother, always following big brother, around everywhere. So again, that's why I think that this story here kind of gets plopped in the middle of in our canon, so that we give a little bit more insight into the heart of brother Judah. So
yeah, and I just skipped ahead a little bit in Jubilees here, and same thing. Yeah, you're exactly right. That it is like when you look at the years, it's kind of a quick precursor. It's like whatever those stories are. When they get the story in advance, prequel. It's a prequel. Yeah. There we go.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
So I think we need to. Language means something, right?
Most of the time.
Words mean things. Language matters.
I'm busy.
In reading this, I'm reminded of a friend of mine, because he's quick to correct someone when they say this word. But it's kind of crazy. Judah promised her a kid, and she received a kid, but that wasn't the kid that he thought he was giving her. So.
Little play on words there.
Little play on words, but yeah, I got a buddy of mine, man. Anytime you say kid, it's like, hey man, how's your kids doing? He's like, oh, I don't have any goats, but my children are awesome. Like, he'll correct you real quick. I think that's awesome. Like I try, especially around him, I try real hard not to say kid, but but yeah, that's funny. So yep, he tried to give her. He was going to give her a kid, but he gave her a kid instead.
There you go. Hey, so Kyle, in like 11 and 12, it uses the word hire. And again, you're talking about words, and words matter. Does hire just mean pay? And they're just trying to be like nice about it and not say what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Got you. It's just being politically correct.
I would think that would be a reference to money.
Right. But it's like it's not really okay to say you're paying for that.
No, I mean,
it was common for them to have temple prostitutes back then. You paid for that, so I mean, it was
yeah. I mean, I mean, who knows what the financial denomination would be for something like this, right? Apparently, whatever would be equivalent to a kid, that was the agreement.
A kid of goats.
Yeah, a kid of the goats. So I mean, I would assume that equivalency was okay in whatever they agreed upon. So I don't think the denomination had any significance or anything like that. I think it was just something of that value, right? So anyway, and the only stuff he had with him was the sheep he was going to shear. So,
and I love that they all try to go back and like figure out what's going on. They're playing and investigation. Well, the girl who was sitting right here, like obviously, like we don't have that person here. Like, what are you talking about? And it's true. Like that wasn't her normal occupation or her normal sitting place. This was a one-off situation. That's what makes this story so interesting. Everything in here seems to be like a one-off situation. So it's like, oh yeah, God's like, oh, if you don't conceive with this woman, you're dead. Like, whoa. Can you imagine? Like in today's world, it's like, here, I'm gonna throw you a lady or throw you a guy, make it happen or you die. What? That's a lot of pressure. Like, I don't. Can I have a minute? Can I think about it? Like, what are the options here? And then she's like, hey, I'm only gonna be here one day. I know what's gonna happen. I already know your plans. I'm gonna be here. I already know what's gonna happen. And then they come back to find out. They're like, we don't know anything you're talking about. So Judah has no alibi here. He's got no reference story or nothing. It's like, it's your kid, dude, and you can't say nothing about it, and no one's just gonna check your story. Yep. This wasn't her normal occupation, so you can't be like, oh yeah, it's the harlot, that's why. It was like, sounds like you just did what you wanted to do with this lady, and you knew she wasn't a harlot, because we don't have a harlot,
right?
Like, we don't do that here. We're not those kind of people.
Well, I mean, think about what he gave her, though. He says, I have nothing in my hands basically except my ring on my finger, my necklace, and my staff. So it's like everything that's important that would be an identifier of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, you know, I'm coming back for this.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, that ring was, I mean, a lot of times rings, you know, signified who you were.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of your prominence or whatever, your necklace. And then
we were just talking about that, about Joseph, right? That the significance of the necklace. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
And of course, the staff had significance.
This wasn't like, you know, some store-bought, you know, bling bling. This was like, she's like, okay, well, when you bring me my kid, I'll give you your stuff back. So, and you know, it was that important for him that he sent a Dulamite all the way back to, hey, make sure you get my stuff back from this lady. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's not like that necklace wouldn't have been recognized, or that ring, or the staff. Like, these were unique pieces, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have a factory that made rope necklaces.
There wasn't a Costco up the road that was selling these wholesale.
Right, they were all one-off custom pieces, kind of thing, you know. So
no kiosk in the mall.
That's right. And I thought this was an interesting statement here. Now, with context clues, I think we can kind of get an idea. If we're not familiar with the word, I think we can get an idea of what it's saying here. It says, "Let her just let her keep them, lest we become a cause of derision." You know, so context clues, we can kind of get an idea. But I thought I would just read this. Derision is a noun that means the use of ridicule or scorn to show contempt, or the state of being laughed at or ridiculed.
Mm.
So yeah, he's like, all right, just let her keep it, man. Like, we don't want to.
Yeah.
We don't want any of that.
Well, even more so, you know, you got to think, you know, again, from her perspective, she's an outsider trying to be on the inside, you know, and she's like, hey, by any means necessary. She knew what she was doing the whole time. She knew who Judah was. She knew what all that stuff that she received was. She knew what its significance was. She knew where he was going to be. She was in the know the whole time. He may have some I didn't know, you know, some ability to kind of claim he didn't know what was going on. I know we would be speculating either way there, but you know, you could kind of tell toward the end there, he's like, hey, I don't want to cause any problems. I don't want this to get back to dad. I'm trying to save face here. I had a moment. I did a thing. Like, hey, if this is going to be an issue, I can get another ring if I have to. I can figure that stuff out. I'd rather get in trouble for losing some items than get in trouble for sleeping with my daughter-in-law. Like, this would not be okay, right? These are breaking now giant Torah commands. So he's like, I don't want anybody to know what's going on here. Keep the stuff. Right. Keep your mouth closed. Let's move on.
Yeah, basically, just don't ask anybody else any more questions or divulge any more information than we got to.
No, you're right. There was no Harley. You're exactly right. No,
yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I just had this kid goat over here for no reason at all.
I was hungry.
Yeah, I was hungry. Yeah.
I have a question. So, you know, I understand, you know, you're not supposed to go behind, how do I even phrase this?
Those words.
So clearly he wasn't supposed to be laying with her, right?
Right.
Why? Is it simply because she was his daughter-in-law by contract, or because of physical contact, or what? Because the first son didn't touch her. The second son did something with her, but spilled his seed.
Right.
There was no, well, I guess there was a type of union, possibly. There was a type of union made there, I would assume, right? I don't know. It's just odd to me, because there's no shared blood between the two of them. Does that make sense? Like, why was this such a bad thing? Why couldn't he step in and do that? She didn't have any children.
Well, first reason is he already promised her to Sheila, or Sheila, or however you say his name. So that was already a prearranged marriage that didn't happen. But
it didn't happen. That's right.
But it was already, like, they were already betrothed, if you want to call it that way. They were already in our modern word, like, engaged. So, like, based on his own words. So he's like, hey, you're my son's new wife. So even in his own right, while yet there might not have been no new ketubah contract, no new consummation between the youngest son and her, that was already in the works. I don't think we ever would have a definition of how that part's okay. Even just from a logic standpoint, maybe we can't go find a specific Torah writing that's like, once you've been engaged, then you kind. But I remember reading like the engagement process was essentially you guys are married. Now it's not official. It's not union by God standard until you uh, enter the tent, but you're still, by all intents and purposes, you're off the market. You're no longer an option whenever you decide to do the dowry, the engagement party, you're together. In our world today, you can break an engagement like it's nobody's business, but back then an engagement it is what it is. That's set in stone. So I think from that perspective alone, minus already the first two kids, and that's already kind of throwing a lot of loops. Maybe there's a super loophole somewhere mixed into that process somewhere, but it seems as though them people got married and the one went into the tent with her, while he didn't complete the whole process. I think that's enough to say they were married and done the fullness of what it takes for that to be legal.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious if y'all had any insight as to whether this was because of the physical contact that was already made from one son, or if it was the contract type situation. What is it about this that makes this an evil thing for them to be together?
Well, one other point is we know it wasn't 100% wrong because God didn't kill Judah like he killed the other two kids.
Right.
So it was wrong, right?
And he was tricked into it.
Exactly.
But he was tricked into it while doing something he shouldn't have been doing anyway.
Exactly. So it was probably in the category of sin, but not in the category of you got to die because you just completely destroyed the process and you did everything wrong. But that's what I said. This whole story is just a bunch of one-off kind of, hey, don't be in the situation just in case. Yeah. let's not go find out why it was wrong.
Yeah. If anybody has done a deep dive into this, I'm really curious about the significance of that. Why this was a no-fly zone here. So I don't know. One last thing. I mean, it in the part that we're reading here, this chapter is titled Judah's incest with Tamar, and I don't know. I guess that's what I'm curious about. Why is this considered an incest so much? Because I guess it's because of the marriage contract, even though there was nothing, there is no blood relationship, there is no none of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically they are blood related, but way back, right? This is a daughter of many sons, all the way up to the line of Aram. So this is from the lineage of Shem. You got Shem and Arphaxad all the way down to Abraham, and then Isaac, Jacob, all that, right? Judah and all that. One of Shem's other children was Aram, and then generations before we get to Tamar here. So,
yeah, the thing I'm curious about too, Kyle. So I think the reason why I was using the word incest is because basically when Judah has taken her, he's taken her as a daughter to give to his son. So it's his daughter-in-law. So he's considered, almost like you're my daughter now. You're not. This isn't, So anyway, when we go back to it, it says the punishment appointed for such an offense on the part of a priest's daughter is in Leviticus 21:9. So I was looking at this. And so my question is Judah considered a priest?
Or
because the judgment he's bringing upon her, we're getting ready to read this. The judgment he's going to bring upon her is as if she was the daughter of a priest. So we'll go ahead and just read it and we'll jump into that, or
yeah, go for it. Why not?
All right, guys, let's pick it back up in 16. And when she had completed 3 months, it was manifest that she was with child, and they told Judah, saying, behold, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law is with child by whoredom. And Judah went into the house of her father and said unto her father and her brothers, Bring her forth and let them burn her, for she hath wrought uncleanness in Israel. And it came to pass, when they had brought her forth to burn her, that she sent to her father-in-law the ring and the necklace and the staff, saying, Discern whose are these, for by him am I with child. And Judah acknowledged and said, Tamar is more righteous than I am, and therefore let them burn her not.
What a nice guy.
Yeah, okay. We don't have to burn her now.
Well,
Never
what's funny
mind.
is we talked about this earlier, kind of setting the example. So you go to what would be a temple prostitute. Everything's cool. Giving her your ring, your staff, your necklace. Come back to pay for your, and then you can't find. So, this don't cause a big ruckus. Let's just keep moving on. And then all of a sudden, Mr. Righteous shows up. Oh, my daughter-in-law's done so and so. Well, put her to the stake, man. Burn her, incinerate her, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of like be a little hypocritical here, son.
Yeah, not necessarily a very righteous judge there, huh?
Yeah, well, I look, I loved him in a fly on the wall to see his daughter-in-law's face. So she's like, "Oh, really? You want to burn me?" Ooh, what do I have here? Oh, this is pretty. Oh, and this right here. I wonder who this will. Oh, there's a staff.
Oh no, they're gonna burn me.
Who's this belong to?
It's got your name engraved on it. Interesting.
Oh, can you imagine? I bet he was white as a sheet, man. He was like,
like that Key and Peele skit where the sweat's dripping down.
Yeah, that would have been. And you imagine though, like not only are you being revealed at that moment, but from reading it, it sounds like he's standing there with dad and brothers, like, yes, bring her forth. We shall take care of this matter correctly. Oh, Father. Oh boy. He's just probably over there like, oh man.
I got.
And burn her. That's pretty brutal.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Yeah, I'll take care of the situation right now. Don't worry about it. My son ain't got to marry her now or nothing. Like we're just gonna take care of this.
So to the point about the son, though, I think that's why why he felt if you remove all the stuff that we know, right? So you delete what all the optionable stuff was. He had sex with a lady, something happened. He went home. She went home. That was the end of the story in his brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden, hey, this is the woman my son is to marry, and my son, the super awesome son of mine, because I'm awesome, that makes him awesome, cannot marry such a woman who's had premarital relations. What? And he already knows. You know what I mean? Like it's not like this was a super virgin lady who's never experienced anything. She already was with brother 1, brother 2. So it's just very interesting to see like his demeanor in this moment where he's like, only the best for my son. Now, me on the other hand, I do whatever I want, but for my son, not a chance. So, his anger was really riled because his son still did have a chance. His son still was kind of in the category of innocent. He didn't do anything yet. And this was supposed to be his betrothed, and now she's pregnant. So guess what? His plans are immediately obliterated. Everything that he thought he was going to do, his ways are greater than God's ways, apparently. It's my desire that my youngest son marries you. And then all of a sudden, oh, well, if you had a baby, that's no longer an option. So now my plans are junk. What I did was junk. And like Joe, with the stuff, all of a sudden it's, oh, and I'm in trouble. So he got the triple whammy here. All his plans were laid to rest. All his ideas were found to be ridiculous. And then he's in trouble. He's the one who's like, you know what? Actually, that fire should have been for me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, can we let's calm the fires down. Somebody put some water on the fire. Nobody needs to get burned today, especially not me. Don't look back my direction.
So guys, we had about a 20-minute sidebar on this that we had
Jonathan's fault.
Yeah, it's all Jonathan's fault. But it was a really cool little rabbit hole that we went down, and we definitely need to bring this up. So the conversation was had about this statement right over here on the side. So there's the editor's note, if you want to call it that. On the left side, it says the punishment appointed for such an offense on the part of a priest's daughter, right? And it references Leviticus 21:9 there. as far as the burning and all that stuff, right? So then we had the question, of, okay, she's a priest's daughter. Is this because she was already betrothed to one of Judah's sons and is somehow part of the priestly lineage that way because she's daughter-in-law now?
Mm-hmm.
Or was she the literal daughter of a priest? Why is she getting this treatment here? And we had a little bit of back and forth on this, and we looked at a few things. There wasn't much we could find on her specific lineage, but this is what I found. Let me pull this up right here. Okay, so this is the lineage or genealogy of Shem. Shem at the top, right? Son of Noah. And Shem had these 5 sons: Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Well, if you go straight down Arphaxad's lineage here, you get Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Ru, Serug, Nahor, Terah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, right? That's the lineage for that particular person involved in this part of the story. But when we get over here to, Tamar was a daughter of Aram. Mm-hmm. So that was not her father's name. She's a daughter of, just like we say, we're Father Abraham had many, I am one of them, right? Well, Abraham wasn't my dad, but he is a forefather, right? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
might be a 5 father. He's a bit older.
Yeah, exactly. So she was a daughter of Aram. And if you look over here, and we looked and we could not find any lineage for Aram, given the details. But she was a daughter of Aram. But she would be way down here at the bottom also, in the same area where the Israelites are listed down here. So this is many generations have gone by. Mm-hmm. So she's a daughter of Aram, and he is a son of Arphaxad. Both of those, that's a son and a daughter of Shem. And Shem is of that priestly lineage, mm-hmm. but not a Levitical priestly lineage. Levitical priesthood come out of that lineage, right, in the Israelites. But that come from Shem, another type of priestly lineage. So yes, they are both of priestly lineage, Shem, and I would say that that's the order of Melchizedek. Do we have any conflict there? Do y'all think that lines up pretty well, guys? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I would go with it as well. I mean, we just know that from reading it at face value that she was a daughter, either the daughter because she was married into the family or a daughter because of her lineage. But we know that what Judah's enacting upon her is from Leviticus 21:9, that if any daughter of a priest is caught whoring, that she would be put to death, burned, literally. It's not even stoning. It's like she would be burned to death.
Right.
So he's enacting this. Now, if this was played out like in his mind the way it was, he was justified in doing so. But he realized when she started showing the bling bling that belonged to him, that's why Judah says in 19, and Judah acknowledged and said, Tamar, he says, is more righteous than I am. And therefore, let them burn her not. He's like, look, she acted more righteous than my entire family at this point. Both my sons are dead because of their evilness. My wife's dead because of her evilness. I was dumb, did some dumb things. Now I'm caught in the middle of this. And so in the end, she was the better person out of all of us. Therefore, this punishment will not, befall her. So, which is good. I mean,
yeah.
So there's actually a lot of interesting stuff that's going on here. Obviously, all these family relations and interrelations, and what's going on between everybody. And ultimately, we find out that between Judah and Tamar, these are all people in the lineage of our Messiah. So God uses the most unlikely characters in the most unlikely of ways, right? We get Bathsheba, we get Ruth, we get the lady in the wall. I always forget her name. Somebody help me out with Rehab.
Rehab, yeah.
And there's all these all these people in Yeshua's lineage, and we're like, that's the Messiah. There's not a there's not a lot of wiggle room there. That's why, we always say when you're reading through scriptures, you get to the genealogies, you're like, skip through all that stuff. Well, then you read these stories and kind of go back and understand who these people are and how they lived and how they got to this point. Some of it took a lot of faith, a lot of understanding, a lot of trust in God, right? Can you imagine Rahab? They're like, hey, we're going to come destroy your city unless you do this. And she's like, well, I don't know what your God's about, but I'm going to do what you say. I want to be on your team because it sounds like you guys are winning. And then those little small actions end up having the biggest impact in like the world. And so here with Judah, he's enacting Torah law from Leviticus that supposedly only existed at Mount Sinai. How does Judah know to follow this protocol that hasn't happened yet? Right? He's quoting Leviticus. That's impossible because Leviticus wasn't written yet.
That's right.
So what's interesting as we read this stuff is there's a law, there's a standard, and there's a set way of doing things. God established that from day one. And yeah, he's given us more revelation of said standard. He hasn't added to his law. The law has always been there. His expectation, his instructions, his concepts, and his ideas for humanity have always been there. And he's revealed more and more to us as we live and we get more dumb. He reveals more stuff like, hey, by the way, yeah, don't do that. At the time, whenever I first told you, I didn't need to give you every rule because those weren't even options yet. But now that they are, don't do that. So Judah's calling on a concept that supposedly hasn't happened yet. So this is an early indicator of clearly God's ways have been God's ways. Clearly he has defined expectations. And when you go against his expectations, like Onan and brother number one, you don't make it. Like Nadab and Abihu, you don't make it. Like the guy who's touching the ark because they put it on the cart, you don't make it. And ultimately, our end goal is not we may all die the first death, but not to die the second death. And that's because of we're living righteous. And what does Judah call Tamar here? Surely she is more righteous than I. So he even knows that's the standard of living. That's the standard of being. And he called back to that and made sure that we all know years and years later, 4,000 years later, it's righteousness that made her better than him.
And with that, guys, we will see you next time for part 2 of chapter 41 in the book of Jubilees. God bless.
Shalom.
Ciao.
Dude, you messed me up with Rehab, bro.
Look, it deleted out of my whole brain.
You said I thought you said the woman in the wall.
Yeah, and she's in the wall.
That's what he said.
That's what I said.
You said the woman in the wall. And the woman in the wall is like maybe talking about Jericho. I figured that's where you were going with it, but
well, remember she was in the wall, and then now they show it historically like that one little spot.
Like Han Solo stuck in the carbonite.
I'm like, what Bible you reading, bro? Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
That's that extra apocrypha.
Yeah.
There's a reason that part was hidden.
Yeah. We found fragments of it in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yep, the lady in the wall.
That's
nice.
it.
That's gonna be a new play, a new parable. Don't be the lady in the wall.